No two strategies are the same, but all strategies strive to create value for customers. There are a variety of ways in which firms have learned to do this, but they tend to follow two themes. One theme is to focus on creating unique value by having different features. Those features can be about the product or technology. They can be intangible, about prestige or aspiration or status that's attached to a given service. In the situation where we're trying to create uniqueness, it typically takes, in a hospitality context, a great deal of attention and effort to quality and service delivery. That usually means that you have to raise the price because the costs of executing on uniqueness are greater. While there are many ways of creating uniqueness or difference, a lot of that is driven by understanding deeply who the target customer is. We sometimes have this mantra: targeted products to targeted customers. Understanding the needs and wants and aspirations of customers in hospitality contexts allows us to provide unique services that benefit them and that they are willing to pay that price premium. On the other end is a different approach. This approach is around creating cost efficiencies and, in fact, cost benefits for the customer. I'm sure you're all familiar with low-cost airline carriers. They fall into this category. Here, the name of the game is to figure out how to create efficiencies in operation so that the margins can be small, but the volume you sell can be large. McDonald's, a classic example, selling billions of burgers around the world and selling them at a relatively low price. Well, that doesn't happen by accident. There are a host of strategies that firms have to deploy in order to execute on low cost. So just as differentiation requires a tremendous amount of attention to building uniqueness and providing the kind of service and expectation that a particular customer will value, to accomplish low cost, you have to do things such as building economies of scale. Anytime you see the word economies, you should know that what we really mean is the reduction of cost. So economies of scale simply means that the more you produce, the lower the per unit price. So economies of scale are one of the ways in which hospitality firms are able to reduce their costs. Anytime you see an organization that attempts to consolidate, and we have a lot of that in hospitality, hotels that acquire other hotels and build larger and larger enterprises with a larger number of units of hotels. They're doing that in large part because there are several costs that go down as the quantity of hotels goes up. Costs of marketing, costs of distribution, costs of purchasing, those are some of the things we can get scale economies on. There are other drivers of low cost, and while we can talk about many of them, I'm only going to mention a few more. One of them, because it's so essential in hospitality and tourism, is capacity utilization. Here, what we're talking about is that the actual fixed costs of an enterprise are much greater if the demand or the volume, or if you prefer, the occupancy is low. So we must keep the capacity up, high occupancy, for example, in a hotel, in order to reduce the actual fixed cost and the burden on the enterprise. So a lot of enterprises are very worried about how do we manage capacity? How do we make sure our hotels are full, our airlines are full? So the whole notion of a load factor on an airline is a function of trying to make sure that plane does not fly empty. If it flies empty, the cost of fuel, the cost of pilots, the cost of the equipment itself is huge. If it flies full, then we reduce the costs. Now, there's one last thought I want to tell you about, and that is taking our uniqueness or differentiation idea and wedding it with trying to manage costs and introducing efficiencies. Now, these might seem to be in conflict. One is about customizing, and the other is about standardizing. But the true strategist has to figure out how to put the two together. How do I customize specific services? How do I standardize back of house or externally driven processes? So true strategy means trying to create what we would consider to be a dual competitive advantage, where I give only the services customers value, and I manage the costs so that my processes, particularly my internal processes, my relationships with partners, the way I outsource, minimizes the costs I incur in executing on that product. Stay tuned, because you're likely to see a lot of truly innovative concepts and ideas in hospitality that have select or limited services that they do extremely well, while simultaneously squeezing out and managing all the extra costs.